Shalom Israel, and welcome to another edition of Yasharalah's 20-minute breakdown, while I attempt to break down the scriptures within 20 minutes. But first and foremost, as always, we give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Baharakah Kadash, and the Akims and the elders in the highways and byways pushing this word in truth and sincerity. All praises. And the elder women teaching the younger women. All praises to you too. And the camps and the solo brothers going out there making videos, pushing out in social media, edifying the body, pushing the truth according to scriptures. All praises. Now, what I'm going to touch on today is the book of Romans, chapter 10 and verse 4. Now, the reason why I'm touching on this verse, because I had a conversation with a Christian just recently. This wasn't really the topic I was going to do, but after that conversation I had with the Christian gentleman, I felt I needed to make this verse very clear, because the Christians use this verse to say that we no longer have to keep the law. Now, come on, I have to urge you, stop taking single verses and making a doctrine from it in order to be lawless. I mean, we've got to stop this. I mean, and then they come out with things like, well, if you break one, you break them all, things like that, as in an excuse not to keep any. Now, the thing is, you're quite happy keeping the laws of this land. The laws of this land, there's much more than the laws of the Most High in the Bible, but you're happy to keep the laws of this land. But when it comes to the laws of the Most High, there's a problem. And then you use certain scriptures that seem to say that, and you run with it. You make a doctrine and you run with it without doing precept upon precept and studying to show thyself approved, rightfully dividing the word of truth, which is how you get the understanding. You've got to do that. You can't read one verse and say, this is what it's saying. The Bible explains itself. You don't have to read a verse and make up a doctrine. You read a verse, and if you're not sure about it, you have to be studied. You see, that's the thing. And then other verses will explain that verse. Because the one thing I have learnt, the Bible does not contradict itself. Man contradicts the Bible because man doesn't have the true knowledge of what it's saying. That's why man contradicts the Bible. But the Bible doesn't contradict itself. And the thing is, the Bible is talking to a certain set of people, especially when you go into, let's even say, especially when you go into Paul's letters, because this is where the confusion really, stems from, is Paul's writing, Paul's letters to the heads of churches. Paul wasn't writing to, Auntie Patsy, who only goes to church on a Sunday and only picks up the Bible once a week, maybe read a couple verses, think she knows what they're saying, and smile, and go to church on a Sunday, pay her tithe, and feel she's blessed. Paul ain't talking to someone like that. Paul ain't talking to the theologian who studied under the Roman Catholic doctrine. Paul is not talking to those theologians that think they are learned. He's not talking to you. He's talking to men that not only knew the law, they were keeping the law. He's talking to proper learned men. That's who these letters are for. It's not for your average Joe who thinks you've got a degree in religion. Because number one, the Bible's not even a religious book. So, we have to bear that in mind. It's a book, it's the written records of the Israelites, and it's a book of laws, statutes, and commandments. And there's also judgments written in this book when you break the commandments. You see, this is what the book contains. It doesn't deal with religion whatsoever. Religion came through man and his philosophy, and they said control of people. That's where religion came in. Yeah? But the Bible and the Most High God's laws were to make you set apart, to make you live clean and right, to serve the Most High as you're supposed to, and to love your brother as yourself. That's what the Bible teaches, really, in a nutshell. And it's for the Israelites, for the whole 12 tribes, no other nation. The Bible talks of 18 nations, but only one nation the Bible's dealing with, which is the whole 12 tribes of Israel, the sons of Jacob. And that's from beginning to end. And then when you try to say, oh, but the Gentiles, because you don't understand who the Gentiles are. That's why you would think that when he's talking about the Gentiles and like all nations gathered together, you'd think he's talking about like actual all other nations, when he's talking about people like the Israelites that are in other nations that became Gentiles because they didn't know who they were. They lost their identity through slavery or through another means. You know, they didn't know who they were living as Gentiles. Because when he says he's going to gather them from all parts of the earth, gather the elect out of Israel, which are the sons of Jacob. That Israel, not the landmass Israel. That's what's going on up in here. So, you know, you need to study to show thyself approved. Now, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go into Romans chapter 10 and verse 4. Because this is one of the verses. I've done other lessons where they misuse. But this is another one of the verse where they say, Christ is the end of the law. And his actual name is Yahushua. It's not even, Jesus. Because the J didn't exist. The letter J and the sound that the J makes didn't exist at the time when the Messiah even walked the earth. The J only came into effect in the 15th century, 1,500 years after the Messiah's death and resurrection. So, you work that out, people. Anyway, let's get into this lesson and let's see what this verse is saying. So we're going to take it first at Romans chapter 10 and verse 4. And then we're going to do something what the Christians don't do. Once we read that verse, we're going to jump up and then we're going to read down and let's see really what's going on. And then we're going to do precept upon precept, go to other scriptures. That is going to make it very clear. Right, with that said, without further ado, I've got my timer in 3, 2, 1. Boom, we're away. Let's go straight there. The book of Romans, chapter 10 and verse 4, and it reads. I'm going to read it as it is written, actually, for this lesson. And it reads, for Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth. Now, really, it should really say the Mashiach, because, that's what it would have said for the Hebrew, because remember, this was written in Hebrew, and as they do teach you that the New Testament was in Greek. So that would have said Christos. That's for the Greek for Christ. Just thought I'd let you know that. But nevertheless, now that's what that verse says. Now, what we're going to do, like I said, we're going to do something that the Christians don't do. We're going to jump up a couple verses. So now we're going to start at verse 2, and we're going to come down in, eventually back into 4 where I begun. And we're going to go to other scriptures, and let's see what's going on, and let's see what this whole event is. Let's break this down. So, let's jump up to Romans chapter 10 and verse 2 and listen to this. And it reads, for this is Paul talking, yeah? And it reads, for I bear them record that they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge. Now, the people who Paul is talking to, he's telling them they have, these people that he's talking to, because remember, these letters are to heads of church, learned men. So he's telling these learned men that they have a zeal for the Most High, but not according to knowledge, yeah? So, they're thinking, hey, excuse me. Now, first and foremost, let me even show you, let me prove to you who Paul is talking to. Watch this. We go to the Romans chapter 7 and verse 1. Let's actually show you who Paul is actually dealing with. Showing you it's not, Pastor Pork Chop or, Auntie Patsy, who only goes church on a Sunday and only knows the Bible is a thick black book with a few verses that she only thinks she understands what's in it. And, pork eating pastor who, keeps no feast days, no laws of like of the dietary law, you know, nothing like that. No, none of the moral laws, you know, nothing like that. He just lives according to and claims he's teaching others how to get to the kingdom and how to be saved and to, you know, stay away from sin when they don't even teach you what sin is to begin with. Right, watch this, yeah? This is who Paul is dealing with. It reads, Romans 7 and verse 1, and it reads, Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, how that the law has dominion over a man as long as he liveth. Now, you see that? Now, why would he say that in Romans 7, and then from 10 now, he's saying now since Christ come, you don't have to keep the law. Would that even make sense? Now he's showing you that he's speaking to people that know the law, how that the law has dominion over a man as long as he lives, showing you that these men were law keepers. So Paul is speaking to men that are already keeping the law, and now he's telling them that this you know, like the Messiah is the end of the law of righteousness. We're going to break that down. Now watch this. Now we go back to Romans chapter 10, and now we're going to read verse 3. Now watch this, yeah? So he's showing, like I said, he's showing these men that they have a zeal for the Most High. Yeah, they're passionate and they're keeping the law, but they don't have the knowledge. What's the knowledge they don't have? The knowledge of the Messiah. That's the problem with these people. They were keeping the law to the T, but they were still looking at animal sacrifices and other ordinances. They didn't acknowledge the Messiah. Watch this. We're gonna read on. Romans chapter 10 and verse 3, and it reads, For they being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of God. Now you see that? Now there's so much meat in that verse. Now it says, for they being ignorant of God's righteousness. What's the ignorance? What is God's righteousness they were ignorant? Because you got to remember, he's saying they're ignorant of the Most High's righteousness. Now these are learned men that know the law and keeping the law. They're like, what do you mean we are ignorant of the Most High's righteousness? I can break down every verse in Isaiah. Can you do that? I can break down every verse in Jeremiah. Can you do that? These are the kind of men Paul is dealing with. Yeah? And he's saying that they're ignorant of God's righteousness. But you see, he's not saying ignorant as in they're stupid. He's saying they're ignorant, meaning unlearned. Because the righteousness he's talking about is of the Messiah that came and was crucified. Yeah? That's what he's talking about. But they're not acknowledging the Messiah. You see? And let me read on, and let me show you here else. And it says, yeah, going about to establish their own righteousness. You see? So they were going about establishing their own righteousness. What was the own righteousness that they were established? They were still thinking that they were being righteous, keeping all the laws, not acknowledging the Messiah, and they were still probably doing animal sacrifice and whatsoever. These things now that were supposed to be done away with. Because it says here, when you read on into Romans 10 and 3, and not submitting themselves unto the righteousness of the Most High. So they weren't submitting themselves under the righteousness of the Most High, yeah? And I'll show you that in a minute. So now, Paul is telling these people that, you know, they're ignorant. So they're thinking, what are you talking about, Paul? So they're looking at Paul. This is why they want to cast him out, why they wanted to stone him. And look, listen to this. Acts chapter, let me even show you this actually. Acts chapter 26, where are we? Acts chapter 26 and verse 24. Listen to this. This is what they said about Paul too. Listen to this, yeah? Acts chapter 26 and verse 24. And as he spake, and as he thus spake for himself, so Paul is speaking for himself. Listen to what Festus said to Paul. As he thus spake for himself, Festus said with a loud voice, Paul, thou art besides thyself. Much learning doth make thee mad. You see, they thought Paul was mad. They're thinking, much learning, Paul, you're crazy. What are you talking about? But Paul knows exactly what he's talking about. Yeah. So remember, jumping back to Romans chapter 10 and verse 3. Remember, Paul said they were ignorant of the righteousness of the Most High. Let me show you what they were ignorant of the righteousness of the Most High. Let me show you what that was. Deuteronomy. Let's go back to where it was prophesied. Deuteronomy chapter 18 and verse 18 into 19. Listen to this. Deuteronomy chapter 18 verse 18, and it reads, I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto thee, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. Now that's the prophecy of the Messiah coming, and we have to obey the Messiah. Listen to what verse 19 says. This is key. Listen to this. Verse 19, and it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words, which he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. So you see, showing you that if you don't listen to the Messiah, the Most High will require, there's a judgment, the Most High will require it of you. Now that's what Paul is trying to teach them, but they're not listening. Because, they think they know the law and they're going about establishing their own righteousness, which is by keeping the whole manner of the law. But you also need the Messiah. And I'll show you why shortly, yeah? Watch this, yeah? Now, saying that, now we jump down to verse 4 where I started. So it's Romans chapter 10 verse 4, and it reads, For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth. Now, it says Christ is the end of the law for righteousness. Now, watch this, yeah? I'm gonna because they say the law is done away with, right? They say the law is done away with. I'm gonna jump to Colossians. Watch this, yeah? I'm gonna jump to the book of Colossians. I'm going to show you something here right now. Colossians chapter 2 and verse 8. Listen to this, yeah? Colossians chapter 2 and verse 8, and it reads, Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after the Messiah. Which it says Christ here, but I say not after the Messiah. Now, that's vain philosophy and deceit when they say, oh, you don't have to do no laws. Laws are done away with. All you got to do is believe and you'll be saved. You'll be good once you believe. Let me show you this, yeah? Let me jump to verse 14 of the same verse. Watch this. Colossians chapter 2 and verse 14. And it reads, Blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. Now, the reason why I went there to show you now, there were ordinances that the Most High took out of the way, that he nailed to the cross. People like to use that verse to try to say, yeah, he took the law out of the way. But no, he took the ordinances that was in the law. You watch this, right? Ordinances. What are the ordinances? Now, you can check this yourself. Go into the Strongs. G1378, which describes the ordinances. Let's go there. Let me read something to you. Ordinances, yeah? And it comes up as dogma. Listen to this, yeah? The number 2 of the ordinances. Listen to what this says. The rules and requirements of the law of Moses. Hear this? Carrying a suggestion of severity and of threatened judgments. Now you see, when you read that correctly, the ordinances that the Most High took out, the Messiah, took out the way when he was nailed to the cross, was the judgments, which was the penalties for breaking the law. So what he took out of the way is the penalties. So when he came, and died on the cross, so you don't receive the penalty of the law, which is death. Certain laws you broke, you would receive the severe penalty, which is death. That's what was removed out of the way. And that's what Paul is trying to teach those men. Because when you go back to Romans chapter 10 verse 4, it says, For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness. Because you got to remember, what was it mean to be right, to get righteousness in the law? you had to, if you broke the law to become back righteous, you had to do animal sacrifice. Yeah. Now watch this. I'm going to show you something here. I'm going to jump to the book of Hebrew. Actually. Let's do this actually. Jump to the book of Hebrews, chapter 9 and verse 1. Listen to this, yeah? Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 1, and it reads, "Then verily the first covenant had also ordinances," you see, "of divine service and a worldly sanctuary." Now showing you that the first covenant, which was the law of Moses, it had ordinances, meaning there was ordinances like if you broke the law, this was an ordinance I had to do. Sorry, brother, I had to put you to death. Yeah? Or if you were uncircumcised, you were cast out of the congregation. If you ate anything defiled, you were cast out of the congregation. You see, things like that. If you adultery, you were put to death, you were stoned. If you broke the Sabbath, like I said, you were stoned. If you blasphemy, you were stoned. These things, you know, some of these people were doing, and they were still trying to do the animal sacrifice. But, you know, that the Most High, you know, the Messiah took out the way. Now, if you carried on doing that after the Messiah come, now you're in sin, because now you're not keeping to the law of the Most High, which he had set. Now, watch this, yeah? I just showed you Hebrews chapter 9 and 1, where it shows that the first covenant had ordinances. Let me just show you this. I'm going to jump right back in time to Exodus chapter 18. Exodus chapter 18 and verse 20. Listen to this. Exodus chapter 18 and verse 20. And it reads, "And thou shalt teach them ordinances and laws." You see, there were the laws, there were ordinances that came with them laws. Yeah. "And thou shalt teach them ordinances and laws, and shalt show them the way wherein they must walk, and the work that they must do." So you see that? He's showing them where the way they must walk and the work they must do. Now, watch this. I'm going to jump to the book of Isaiah. I want to prove everything. I don't want to leave no stone unturned. Watch this. Isaiah chapter 58 and verse 2. Listen to this. The book of Isaiah chapter 58 and verse 2, and it reads, "Yet they seek me daily and delight to know my ways, as a nation that did righteousness," listen to this, "and forsook not the ordinance," listen to this, "the ordinance of their God." Listen to this. "They ask of me the ordinances of justice." You hear that? So there were ordinances of justice, which were penalties for breaking the law. Let me read on. "They take delight in approaching to God." Now you see that? I just wanted to go. I went there just to show you there were ordinances they had to do. Now watch this. Yeah, I'm going to jump back quickly. Wow, time is going fast. I can't always jump now to 1 Corinthians. Watch this. Yeah, 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 56. Listen to this. Yeah, 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 56, and it reads, "The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law." Now, that may get you confused, but you've got to understand what that's saying. The sting of death, listen to this, the sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. Now, people would misuse that and trying to see, you die if you keep the law, you know? That's what they're trying to say. But what it's really trying to say, the Messiah has taken the sting out of the law, which would have been death if you broke the law. That's what that's showing you. Yeah. And if you continue in that, the law of sacrifice, because remember that was a law. If you go to Leviticus 7, I think, and 11, so when it gives you a list in Pride, it says this is the law of sacrifice. So if you continue in the law of sacrifice, you are now in sin, because now you're not acknowledging the Messiah. I remember in Deuteronomy 18 and verse 19, the Most High said, if you don't listen to the Messiah, he will require it of you. So there will be a punishment if you're not listening to the Messiah. Yeah. Now, I'll stay in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and I'll jump down to 58. Listen to this. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 58, and it reads, Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, the work of Yahweh, yeah? Listen to this, the work of, I'll just read it as it's written for now. Always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as ye know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. So he said, always continue in the work of the Lord. What is the work of the Lord you must continue in? Let me prove that too. Psalms 78 and verse 5 into 7. Listen to this, yeah? Psalms chapter 78 and verse 5. For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should make them known to their children. Verse 6. That the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should arise and declare them to their children. See, it's an everlasting thing. And listen to this. Verse 7. That they might set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. That's the work you got to be doing. And listen to this. Boy, time's running up quick. I better move. Watch this quickly. Philippians chapter 3 verse 17. Listen to this. Philippians chapter 3 verse 17. And it reads, Brethren, be followers together of me, and mark them which walk so as ye have us for an example. So you see, Paul is showing you that you have to walk the way he walks. Remember, Paul said, he keeps the perfect manner of the law, right? Wow, time is going quick. Watch this, yeah? Revelations, quickly now. I'm almost about to time out. Quickly, Revelations chapter 2 and verse 5. Listen to this. Revelations chapter 2 verse 5. And it reads, Remember therefore from whence thou art fallen, and repent, and do the first works. What's the first works? The law of Moses, without animal sacrifice. Yeah? Do the first works, or else I will come unto thee quickly, and will remove thy candlestick out of his place, except thou repent. So you must repent quickly. Last one I want to give before I time out. Revelations 14 and verse 12. Watch this. The book of Revelation, chapter 14, verse 12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Yahushai, of the one they call Jesus Christ. Yahushai is his correct Hebrew name. So I just want to show you that the law is not done away with. Yeah, I'll put a couple other verses on the screen, like 1 John 2 and 3, because you say you know him. If you know him, you've got to keep his commandments. If you're not keeping these commandments, you're a liar. The truth ain't in you. I'll put that on the screen. I'm about to time out. With that, we out.